Gouache versus watercolor. What's better and where are the differences? Let's find out. Hey guys, how are you doing? At first, I'm starting with the painting with the watercolor. And because I wanted to just use watercolor here, I started off with some masking fluid. You could use this pen that I showed at first, or you could use the more fluid part with a brush like I did. I find that easier, to be honest. And now I'm starting with my picture. I decided to do two pictures where I paint the one side with watercolor and the other side with gouache, so we can really compare the two mediums and see where the differences are. But I didn't completely do it the same way because gouache and watercolor are two different mediums and they can do different things. So I wanted to use both to their advantage and use them a little bit differently depending on what they can do. Here you can see it's still kind of similar because I'm doing a bit wet on wet here. The bottom picture is going to be a landscape and I did the lake and now I'm doing the sky. It's very similar because it's just the first layer. But here's where it starts to get a little bit different. There are some flowers in the foreground, and on the watercolor side, I decided to start with the flowers because those are lighter. And on the gouache side, I actually started with the leaves because it doesn't matter. You can start with the darker one because gouache is opaque. And you can build the colors. You can go from dark to light. You can go from light to dark and everything in between. Gouache is really easy that way. If you make a mistake, you can just paint over it. Very similar to acrylic paint. Now I'm removing the masking fluid here. And I'm adding in some details to our fruits. And yeah, I did that pretty similarly when comparing gouache and watercolors here. It's just fruits, it's a basic picture, and you will see the differences very soon. Yeah, and with watercolors you can do glazing, you can get tons and tons of details. I'm not going too deep into that topic now because I don't want to give you a whole course on watercolors here. But you can do a lot with watercolors, and when you first hear about gouache, it seems like it's a magical paint that can do anything, that can do watercolor and acrylic. But let me tell you, gouache is the perfect mixture between those two mediums, yes, but it can't do everything that those mediums can. Gouache is just very different. If you really want to find it out, you kind of have to try it for yourself because it's just very intuitive for me. It feels differently. You get a very different result and you get a kind of a different style. I think that I got way more details with the watercolors even though I didn't add more details in. And yeah, I'm not saying that watercolors are better because I really love gouache. I really have to tell you that I love this medium. I fell in love with it the first time I used it and I've been loving it ever since. But watercolors are very nice as well. So I'm going to tell you right now that I'm not going to pick a winner in this battle because both can do different things. And they do give you a different style. You kind of have to decide what kind of style you want to achieve. So where are the main differences? The watercolors seem like they have a bit more texture and therefore a bit more details. At least when I'm using them, and I use them quite similarly compared to the gouache. And the gouache has less details. I think that with gouache, the lighter tones actually dry darker. Hey, here's my hamster! Say hello, Kira! With gouache, the lighter tones dry darker and the darker tones dry lighter. So you have less contrast. And I think that you can get very smooth layers. They can be so smooth. If you want to do more let's say two-dimensional illustration, gouache is the perfect medium for you because you can get those smooth layers, not a lot of variations. You can just do that. They are quite opaque, at least the ones I'm using here. I'm using Winsor & Newton Designer's gouache, by the way, and I'm comparing those to the Daniel Smith Essential set. And I'm gonna link those below if you decide you want to buy one of those sets. Those are both the starter packs and just with some basic colors. And I want to tell you, I'd rather spend a little bit more on less colors than less on more colors. I think the quality is so much more important than quantity when it comes to art supplies. You can really see and feel the difference. Oh my god, there's such a huge difference, and that's why I'm using high-end products, but I only have the starter sets. Those weren't too expensive, and it's just nice to work with them, and I learned mixing along the way, and yeah, I can really recommend that. And in case you didn't notice, I lost a lot of footage here. I lost the footage from the fruits on the right side where I did them with gouache. But don't worry, I'm going to show them to you again because I did add a little bit more details to the watercolor part, and you're going to see the gouache part then again and see where the differences are. I'm adding in those trees now on the gouache side, and here I really felt the difference between the gouache and the watercolor because the watercolors just blend. I don't know, you can do glazing, which is just doing one layer on top of the other, and the one on the bottom will shine through a little bit, so you can kind of mix them. But because gouache is opaque, you can't really do that. You have to make lots of different shades to make a transition from the darker to the lighter tones. I really hope that you understand what I'm saying here because it's hard to explain, but it looks differently. Those trees, I used almost the same colors, or at least I tried, but you see it for yourself that it's just different. It's hard to explain. I did a lot of dots because that's how I draw trees, and I did that with the watercolors and I did that with the gouache, and I used almost the same amount of water. Here you can see those oranges again, and I think you can see what I did here. On the left side I used the masking fluid, so we have those light tones and a lot of contrast, whereas on the right side I did those white and lighter details with the gouache because it is opaque, and I tried to build up those colors. And you can see that it's a lot softer on the right side. Those are the differences if you ask me. The gouache looks a bit softer, whereas the watercolors give you a little bit more contrast and you get a lot more texture. But I really love both styles, and I actually did just do a painting where I used both mediums, so they work great together. I really hope that you liked this video, and if you did so, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I wish you a very nice week, and until next time, goodbye!